My son blocked my number for months. When I finally saw him again, he was standing beside my sister. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I knew something was wrong when the calls stopped going through. Not just the unanswered calls, I'd gotten used to those over the previous weeks. The ringing that went on until voicemail picked up, my voice getting smaller and more desperate with each message. Hey, sweetheart, just checking in. Jake, please call me back when you get a chance. I'm starting to worry, honey. Is everything okay? But then came the day when the ringing stopped altogether. One ring, then straight to voicemail. I called again, thinking it was a network error. Same thing. Again. 5 times in a row, my hands shaking harder with each attempt. That's when I knew he'd blocked me. My son, my Jake, my baby boy, the child I'd raised alone from the time he was 3 years old, had blocked his own mother's number. I need to back up. I need you to understand who we were before everything fell apart. Jake came into this world 23 years ago on a Tuesday morning in April. Spring rain against the hospital windows, my ex-husband pacing the halls because he couldn't handle seeing me in pain. Even then, I should have known. But I was 25 and convinced that love could fix anything, that having a baby would cement our family, that we'd figure it out together. We didn't figure it out. By the time Jake was 3, David was gone. Not just gone from the marriage, but gone. Moved to Seattle for a job opportunity, sent child support checks that barely covered daycare, called on Jake's birthday and Christmas if he remembered. Jake stopped asking about him by the time he was 5. So it was just us, me and my boy against the world. I worked 2 jobs for years, administrative assistant during the day, waitressing 3 nights a week. We lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment that always smelled faintly of the Indian restaurant downstairs. I couldn't afford much, but I made sure Jake had what he needed. Good school supplies, clothes that fit properly, even if they came from Target instead of the mall. Books. So many books. Jake loved to read. I remember him at 6 years old, curled up in the corner of our lumpy couch, completely absorbed in Where the Wild Things Are. I'd come home from my day job, exhausted, and he'd look up with those huge brown eyes and say, "Mom, do you think Max's mom was mad at him for running away?" "I think she loved him too much to stay mad," I'd tell him. "Like you love me?" "Like I love you." He'd smile and go back to his book, satisfied. Those years were hard, but they were ours. We had routines. Friday nights were movie nights. We'd make popcorn and watch whatever animated film Jake chose, and I'd pretend I wasn't falling asleep halfway through. Sunday mornings were for pancakes. I'd let him crack the eggs, even though he always got shell fragments in the bowl. We'd spend 20 minutes picking them out together, laughing. When Jake started having trouble with math in 3rd grade, I stayed up late every night, relearning multiplication and fractions so I could help him. When he got bullied in 5th grade for wearing secondhand clothes, I picked up extra shifts and bought him new sneakers, the kind the other kids wore. When he made the middle school basketball team, I never missed a game, not one. Even when I had to leave my waitressing shift early and lose tips I desperately needed. I was there in the bleachers, screaming encouragement while he looked for me in the crowd. High school was harder. Money was always tight. Jake started noticing what we didn't have: the new phones, the gaming systems, the class trips I couldn't always afford. But he never complained. Not really. He got a part-time job at 16, bagging groceries, and insisted on contributing to household expenses. "Mom, you've done enough," he'd say, pressing cash into my hand. "That's your money, baby. Save it for college." "We'll both save it, together." Together. That word meant everything. He got into State University on a partial scholarship. I cried when we got the letter. Ugly, gulping sobs of pride and relief. My son, brilliant, hardworking, kind, was going to college. First in our family. He was going to have opportunities I never had. The day I dropped him off at the dorms, I held it together until I got back to the car. Then I sat in the parking lot and cried for an hour. Not sad tears, proud tears, scared tears. The apartment was going to be so quiet without him, but we talked constantly that first year. Daily phone calls where he told me about his classes, his roommate, the girl he had a crush on. Weekend visits home where he'd do his laundry and eat everything in the refrigerator and fall asleep on the couch while we watched TV. You don't have to come home so often, I'd tell him. You should be out with friends, having fun. I am having fun, he'd say. I like hanging out with you. In his sophomore year, the calls became less frequent. I understood he was busy, making friends, living his life. That was natural, healthy, but we still talked twice a week at least. He still came home once a month. By junior year, it was once a week if I was lucky. Usually texts instead of calls. Short ones. Busy with exams. Got plans this weekend. Can't talk now. I told myself it was normal. He was 21. He needed independence. I couldn't be clingy. Couldn't be that mother who couldn't let go. But then senior year started, and something changed. The texts became even shorter. Then they stopped altogether. Calls went unanswered. When I drove to campus once to surprise him with his favorite homemade cookies, his roommate told me Jake wasn't there. Hadn't been there all weekend, actually. Do you know where he is? I asked, trying not to sound as panicked as I felt. The roommate, a kid named Marcus with kind eyes, hesitated. I think. Maybe you should call him, Mrs. Morrison. I've been trying. He won't answer. Marcus looked uncomfortable. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I left the cookies and drove home in a daze. The weeks that followed were torture. I called every day, left voicemails that started casual and grew increasingly desperate. I texted, I emailed. I even sent a letter to his dorm, an actual handwritten letter, because I didn't know what else to do. Nothing. I reached out to his friends on social media, the few I knew. Most didn't respond. One girl, Hannah, replied, I'm sorry, Mrs. Morrison. I think Jake needs some space right now. I'm sure he'll reach out when he's ready. Space? Space from what? What had I done? I replayed every conversation we'd had in the previous months, searching for clues. Had I said something wrong? Been too pushy about him visiting? Asked too many questions about his life? I couldn't figure it out. The not knowing was eating me alive. My sister Rachel called one evening in early October. We'd never been particularly close. There's 6 years between us. And we'd always been different. Where I was practical and grounded, Rachel was dramatic and impulsive. She'd gone through 3 marriages, countless jobs, more fresh starts than I could count. She lived 2 hours away, and we talked maybe once a month, saw each other at holidays. Hey, she said, how's it going? Fine, I lied. I didn't want to talk about Jake. Didn't want to admit that my son, my relationship with my son, the one thing I'd always thought I got right, was falling apart. And Jake? How's school? Good, busy. You sound weird. Everything okay? Yeah, just tired. Long day. We chatted for a few more minutes about nothing or new job, the weather, our mother's upcoming birthday, normal sister stuff. When we hung up, I thought nothing of it. That was early October. By late November, I still hadn't heard from Jake. Thanksgiving came and went. He didn't come home, didn't call. I spent the holiday alone in our apartment, staring at the turkey breast I'd made anyway, crying into my mashed potatoes. Christmas was worse. I bought Jake presents, a new laptop bag he'd mentioned needing, books by his favorite author, a framed photo of us from his high school graduation. I wrapped them carefully and put them under the small tree in our living room. Maybe he'd surprise me. Maybe he'd show up on Christmas Eve like he always had, with that crooked smile, saying, Hey, Mom, did you miss me? He didn't come. Christmas morning, I sat alone and called his number. One ring, voicemail, still blocked. I opened a bottle of wine at 10 in the morning and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. That's when I called Rachel. Jake won't talk to me, I said as soon as she answered. My voice cracked. I don't know what happened, but he's blocked my number and won't return any of my messages, and I don't know what to do. There was a long pause. Too long. Rachel? I'm sure he's just... You know how kids are at that age. They get caught up in their own lives. He blocked me. That's not normal caught up in their own life behavior. Maybe he just needs time to figure some things out. Figure what out? What does that mean? I don't know, Claire. I'm just trying to help. But something in her voice sounded off, strained, like she was choosing her words too carefully. Have you talked to him? I asked suddenly. Another pause. What? Have you talked to Jake? I mean, we've chatted a few times. He reached out a while back, just to say hi. My stomach dropped. He reached out to you? It wasn't a big deal, just casual conversation. When? I don't know, Claire. A few months ago, maybe? A few months ago, when he stopped talking to me. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Rachel? Look, I really don't want to get in the middle of this. Whatever's going on between you and Jake, you two need to work it out. How can I work it out when he won't talk to me? Maybe that's your answer right there. Maybe he doesn't want to work it out. The words hit like a slap. My sister, my own sister, telling me that my son didn't want me in his life anymore. I hung up without saying goodbye. January came, then February. Jake's 23rd birthday passed in early March. I sent a card to his dorm, knowing he probably wouldn't read it. I transferred $200 into his bank account, money I couldn't really spare, but wanted him to have anyway. Happy birthday, baby. I love you. I'm here whenever you're ready to talk. No response. I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Martinez was kind, patient, and completely unable to give me the answers I wanted. What did I do wrong? I asked during our third session. You may not have done anything wrong. Then why won't he talk to me? There could be many reasons. Sometimes young adults need to separate from their parents to figure out who they are as individuals. By blocking their mother's number? It's an extreme choice, but perhaps he felt he needed a complete break. From me, his mother, the person who sacrificed everything for him. Dr. Martinez gave me a gentle look. Sometimes the people we sacrifice the most for feel the weight of that sacrifice. Sometimes it feels like pressure. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. But somewhere deep down, I wondered if she might be right. Had I made Jake feel guilty? Had I, without meaning to, made him feel like he owed me something? April arrived. 1 year since I'd last actually spoken to my son. 1 year of silence, of unanswered questions, of grief so heavy I could barely breathe under the weight of it. I'd stopped calling, stopped texting. What was the point? He'd made his choice. I was in the grocery store on a Saturday afternoon, standing in the produce section, trying to remember if I needed onions, when I saw him. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. I'd imagined seeing Jake so many times over the past months, glimpses of boys with his build, his hair color, his walk. My mind playing cruel tricks. But this wasn't my imagination. Jake stood by the deli counter, 30 feet away, looking at the pre-made sandwiches. He'd let his hair grow longer. He was wearing a jacket I didn't recognize. But it was definitely him. My son. My Jake. My heart stopped. Then started again, racing, pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I dropped the pepper I'd been holding and started walking toward him. My legs felt strange, disconnected from my body. The store seemed to tilt and blur around me. Jake! I called out. My voice came out hoarse, strange. He looked up. Our eyes met. For 1 second, one perfect, infinite second, I saw recognition in his face. I saw my son. Then his expression closed off, became blank, neutral, like he was looking at a stranger. Jake, I said again, closer now. Close enough to touch him if I reached out. Baby, it's me. I know who you are. His voice was cold, flat, a voice I didn't recognize. I've been trying to reach you for months. You blocked me. Why did you block me? I needed space. Space? Jake, I'm your mother. You can't just cut me out of your life without explaining why. I can do whatever I need to do. Tears burned my eyes. Did I do something wrong? Please just tell me what I did. Let me fix it. Mom! He stopped, corrected himself. Claire. This isn't the place. Claire? He'd called me Claire. Then where? When? I'll meet you anywhere, anytime. Please, just talk to me. He looked past me, over my shoulder, and his expression changed, softened. She's here, he said quietly. I turned. Rachel stood there. My sister. She had a shopping cart with wine and cheese and crackers ingredients for a party, or maybe just a nice dinner. She wore a new coat, expensive looking. Her hair was freshly colored. And the way she looked at Jake, the familiarity in it, the comfort made my blood run cold. Oh, she said when she saw me, just that. Oh. The three of us stood there in the middle of the grocery store, forming a triangle of tension and unspoken truths. You knew, I whispered, looking at Rachel. All this time. You knew where he was. Rachel's face went through several expressions: surprise, guilt, defiance. Claire, let me explain. He's been with you. It wasn't a question. I could see it in their body language, the way Jake stood slightly closer to her than to me. This whole time, while I've been going out of my mind with worry, he's been with you. I invited him to stay with me while he figured some things out, Rachel said. Her voice had that same careful quality from our Christmas phone call. He needed somewhere safe. Safe? Safe from what? From me? Jake flinched but said nothing. Jake came to me because he needed help, Rachel continued. He needed someone to talk to, someone who would listen without judgment. I've always listened to him. Have you? Rachel's voice rose. Have you really? Or have you spent his whole life making him responsible for your happiness? Making him carry the weight of your sacrifices? The words were like bullets. Each one found its mark. That's not fair, I choked out. I did everything for him. I gave up everything. Exactly. Rachel's eyes flashed. You gave up everything, and you made sure he knew it, every single day. I worked 2 jobs for you. I never miss your games. I can't afford things because I'm putting you through college. Do you know how that feels? To be someone's entire reason for existing? I didn't mean. You made him your whole life, Rachel said, more gently now. And that's a heavy burden for a kid to carry. He couldn't breathe around you, Claire. He couldn't make a single decision without thinking about how it would affect you, how you'd sacrificed for him, what he owed you. I looked at Jake, pleading. Is that true? Is that how you felt? He wouldn't meet my eyes. I just needed space. I needed to figure out who I am without being your son, without being the kid you sacrificed everything for. But you are my son. I know, but that can't be all I am. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. I gripped the edge of Rachel's shopping cart for support. So you just... What? Moved in with Rachel? Spent the holidays with her? Let me sit alone, wondering if you were dead or alive while you played happy family with my sister. He called you several times to tell you he was okay, Rachel said. You didn't answer. I didn't. What? My mind reeled. My phone never. Then I remembered. New Year's Day. I'd been so depressed I'd turned my phone off for 3 days. Couldn't bear to look at it, at the empty text threads, at Jake's contact photo smiling back at me. When I'd finally turned it back on, there had been a missed call from an unknown number. I'd assumed it was spam. That was you? I asked Jake. He nodded. I tried. You didn't pick up, so I figured. I figured you were okay with the distance. Okay with it? Jake, I've been dying. My voice broke completely. I've been grieving you like you were dead. Guilt flashed across his face, but Rachel put a hand on his arm. a protective gesture, possessive. Something inside me snapped. You! I said to Rachel, my voice shaking with rage. You did this. You poisoned him against me. Nah, I didn't have to poison him against anyone. I just gave him space to tell his truth. His truth? Or the truth you wanted him to believe? What did you tell him, Rachel? What lies did you fill his head with? No lies. Just things you probably should have been honest about years ago. My heart stopped. What things? Rachel and Jake exchanged a look. Tell me, I demanded. What things? Jake finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. She told me about Dad. The bottom fell out of my world. What about your dad? That you drove him away. That he wanted to be involved in my life, but you made it impossible. That you poisoned me against him the same way you're accusing Rachel of poisoning me against you. That's not true. Your father left us. He chose his career over his family. He sent letters, Jake said. His eyes were hard now, angry. He sent birthday cards and Christmas presents. He invited me to visit him, and you intercepted all of it. You threw it all away. My mouth opened, closed. My mind scrambled for denial, for explanation. But the truth was written all over Jake's face. Rachel had told him. She'd told him about the letters I'd thrown away, the presents I'd donated, the phone calls I'd screened. She'd told him how I'd built a wall between Jake and his father, brick by brick, lie by lie. I was protecting you, I whispered. From what? From having a father? From being hurt, from being disappointed. He left us, Jake. He chose to leave. And you chose to make sure he could never come back. The accusation hung in the air between us. I did what I thought was best, I said weakly. I was young, and I was hurt, and I thought... You thought you knew better than everyone else, Rachel interrupted. Just like you always do. You decided what was best for Jake without ever asking him what he wanted. You decided Dad was a bad influence without giving him a chance to prove otherwise. You controlled every aspect of Jake's life because you couldn't control anything else. I raised him alone. I worked myself to the bone for him. And you never let him forget it, Rachel shot back. That's not love, Claire. That's manipulation. The word hit me like a physical blow. I love my son. I know you do, but love without boundaries is suffocating. I looked at Jake, desperate. I never meant to suffocate you. I just wanted to give you a good life. I wanted you to have everything I didn't have. I know, he said quietly, but somewhere along the way, your dreams for me became chains. I couldn't figure out what I wanted because I was too busy trying to be what you needed me to be. And Rachel gave you permission to be something else? Rachel gave me space to breathe. I felt like I was being torn in half. Rage at Rachel for interfering, for stealing my son. Grief over what I'd apparently done to drive him away. Confusion because I'd truly believed I was doing everything right. How long? I asked. How long has he been living with you? Since September, Rachel admitted. He showed up at my door one night, completely lost. He said he couldn't go home, couldn't face you, so I let him stay. 6 months. Jake had been living with Rachel for 6 months. You should have told me, I said. My voice sounded dead, hollow. Even if you thought I was the worst mother in the world, you should have told me he was safe. You let me suffer. For the first time, Rachel looked genuinely guilty. You're right. I should have. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back 6 months of my life. 6 months of thinking my son hated me, that I'd lost him forever. You haven't lost him, Rachel said. He's right here. But you need to do the work, Claire. You need to actually listen to what he's telling you instead of just hearing what you want to hear. I looked at Jake. Really looked at him. He'd changed in the months since I'd seen him last. Looked older. Looked tired. But also lighter. Like he'd set down something heavy he'd been carrying. What do you want from me? I asked him. Do you want me to apologize for raising you? For working hard to give you a life? No, he said. I want you to understand that you can love someone and still hurt them. That sacrifice without boundaries becomes guilt. That I'm grateful for everything you did, but I also needed room to become my own person. By cutting me out completely? I didn't know how else to do it. Every time I tried to pull back, you pulled harder. Every time I tried to set a boundary, you made it about your pain, your sacrifice. I couldn't breathe, Mom. I couldn't exist outside of being your son. The truth of his words cut deeper than any knife. I didn't realize, I whispered. I thought we were close. I thought you were happy. I was happy sometimes, but I was also drowning. We stood there in silence, other shoppers moving around us, giving us wide berth. An island of dysfunction in the middle of the produce section. So what now? I finally asked. Do you want me in your life at all? Jake hesitated, looked at Rachel, then back at me. I don't know, he admitted. I know I can't go back to how things were. The dynamic we had. It wasn't healthy for either of us. But you'll stay with Rachel. For now, yeah. Until I graduate. Until I figure things out. And me? Maybe we can try again. Slowly. With boundaries this time. With honesty. It wasn't what I wanted to hear. I wanted him to say he'd made a mistake. That he was coming home. That everything would go back to normal. But normal was the problem. Normal was what had driven him away. Okay, I heard myself say. We can try. Whatever you need. Jake nodded slowly. Thank you. Rachel touched my arm gently. Claire, I know you're angry with me, and you have every right to be, but I really was trying to help both of you. I just wanted Jake to have space to figure things out. By keeping him from me. By giving him permission to need something different than what you were offering. I pulled my arm away. I can't deal with you right now. That's fair. I looked at Jake one more time. My son, my baby, the center of my universe for 23 years. I love you, I said. I have always loved you. Everything I did because I loved you. I know, he said softly. I love you too, Mom. But love isn't enough if it comes with conditions and expectations. Mine never did. It did. You just didn't realize it. Maybe he was right. Maybe Dr. Martinez was right. Maybe Rachel was right. Maybe I'd loved my son so hard, so completely, so desperately, that I'd smothered the very thing I was trying to protect. I left the grocery store without buying anything, drove home in a daze, sat in my empty apartment, and looked at the framed photos of Jake that covered every surface. Jake at 3, gap-toothed and grinning. Jake at 10, holding his first-place basketball trophy. Jake at 18, in his graduation cap and gown. Every photo was a memory of love, but also, if I was honest, a memory of need. My need. My need for him to be happy, to be successful, to validate all the sacrifices I'd made. I'd built my entire identity around being Jake's mother, around being the mother who gave up everything, who worked herself to the bone, who never missed a game. I'd worn my martyrdom like a badge of honor, and I'd never stopped to ask if Jake wanted me to be a martyr, if he wanted to be the reason for my sacrifices, if he wanted to carry the weight of my unconditional but heavy love. The weeks that followed were strange and painful. Jake and I started texting, short messages at first. How are classes? Good. You? Work is fine. Miss you. Miss you too. Not, I love you. Not, I'm sorry. Just, miss you too. It was something. It was a start. Rachel called me once. I let it go to voicemail. Listened to her message 3 times before deleting it. Claire, I know you hate me right now. I get it. But I need you to know that Jake is okay. He's doing really well, actually. He's thinking about grad school. He's happy. And I think he's ready to start rebuilding with you when you're ready. I'm sorry for not telling you where he was. That was wrong. But I'm not sorry for giving him space to heal. I hope someday you can understand that. Call me if you want to talk. I didn't call her. I wasn't ready. But I did start seeing Dr. Martinez twice a week. We talked about codependency, about enmeshment, about how trauma and single motherhood and poverty had made me cling too tight to the one good thing in my life. You were surviving, Dr. Martinez said. You were doing your best in impossible circumstances. But now, Jake needs something different, and you can either adapt or lose him completely. What if I adapt and lose myself? Who are you without being Jake's mother? The question terrified me because I didn't know the answer. In May, Jake graduated. Rachel called to tell me. There's a ceremony on the 15th. Jake wants you there, if you want to come. Every fiber of my being wanted to say no, to punish them both by staying away, by making them see what they'd taken from me. But that would be about my pain again, about my needs. So I said yes. I sat in the stadium with thousands of other parents, watching graduates file onto the field. When I spotted Jake in his cap and gown, my heart clenched so hard I couldn't breathe. He'd made it. Despite everything, despite his absent father, despite our cramped apartment and my 2 jobs, despite the weight of my expectations and sacrifices, he'd made it. I'd been so focused on what I'd given him that I'd forgotten to see what he'd achieved on his own. Rachel sat beside me. We didn't talk much, but her presence wasn't entirely uncomfortable. When Jake's name was called and he walked across the stage, we both stood up and cheered. Afterward, in the chaos of families reuniting, Jake found us. Me and Rachel, standing together but apart. He hugged Rachel first, long and tight, whispered something in her ear that made her laugh. Then he turned to me. Hi, Mom. Hi, baby. Congratulations. We hugged. It was awkward at first, tentative, but then his arms tightened around me, and I felt him shake slightly, and I realized he was crying. I'm sorry, he whispered into my shoulder. For all of it. For hurting you. I'm sorry, too, I whispered back. For not seeing what you needed. For making everything about me. We stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the middle of the crowd. When we finally pulled apart, Jake was smiling. A real smile, not the blank look from the grocery store. Think we can start over? He asked. I'd like that. It's going to be different this time. I know. I'm moving to Boston in August, grad school. I need to do this on my own. The words hurt, but I nodded. Okay. But I want you in my life, just differently. I can do differently. Rachel stood back, watching us with tears in her eyes. When I looked at her, I felt a complicated tangle of emotions. Anger, jealousy, resentment. But also, underneath it all, something that might eventually become gratitude. She'd done what I couldn't do. She'd let Jake go while still holding space for him. She'd given him the room to figure out who he was without losing him completely. I hated her for it, and I'd probably always carry some resentment. But maybe, eventually, I could learn from it too. It's been 4 months since the graduation. Jake and I talk once a week now. Real conversations, not just surface pleasantries. He tells me about his program, his new city, his life. I tell him about work, about therapy, about the book club I joined. I don't tell him how empty the apartment feels. How I had to take down half the photos because they made me too sad. How I'm learning to build a life that isn't centered entirely around being his mother. Those things are my work to do, not his burden to carry. He's coming home for Thanksgiving. His choice. His invitation. Rachel will be there too. We've been talking more, rebuilding our own relationship. It's not easy. There's still hurt and anger to work through. But we're trying. The truth is, I don't know if my relationship with Jake will ever be what it was. That closeness we had when he was younger, it's gone. Changed into something new that I'm still learning to navigate. Some days I grieve for what we lost. For the mother-son bond I thought was unbreakable. For the future I'd imagined where Jake stayed close forever. But some days I see glimpses of what we might become. A relationship built on respect instead of need. On boundaries instead of enmeshment. On love that gives room to breathe. My son blocked my number for months. When I finally saw him again, he was standing beside my sister. And in that moment, I felt like I'd lost everything. But maybe what I actually lost was an illusion, a fantasy of perfect closeness that was actually slowly suffocating us both. And maybe what I'm gaining, slowly, painfully, one honest conversation at a time, is something real. I just wish it hadn't hurt so much to get here.